Hey, what's up, guys? This is D, and you're watching the Rear Naked Podcast. Now, I want to thank you guys for supporting the show so far. We're still in the early stages of the show, but we've had a great response to the first couple of episodes, so we're looking forward to bringing you guys a bunch more content in 2019, including some really cool UFC fighter interviews that you guys are going to dig. So most of what we're going to be talking about on the show today is going to be UFC 235 coming up with John Jones versus Anthony Smith. But before we do, wanted to touch on a couple of fights from last week's card. In the main event, a lot of people thought that Blachowicz was going to have what it took to stop Thiago Santos, but that wasn't the case. You saw that Santos came away with the KO win over Blachowicz, and then in the co-main event, Stefan Struve wins via submission and then announces his retirement after UFC Prague. So, yeah, Stefan Struve, man, guys had a crazy long UFC career and professional career altogether. He made his debut at 17 years old. And, yeah, what else can you say about Stefan Struve, man? The guy's had almost 100 professional fights and won most of them. So congratulations to Stefan Struve, and, have a great retirement. After that, we want to talk about the Pudilova decision. Now, a lot of people were upset about this, including me, and for good reason. I thought that Pudilova won that fight, but that's what happens when you leave it in the hands of the judges, man. You never know what those guys are looking at, and obviously this one, they were looking at the fucking ground or something, because Pudilova clearly won that fight, and while she didn't get the decision, and has to accept what the judges gave her. I feel like something needs to be done about this between the short stoppages from some of the refs lately and the things like this with the judges' decisions. I think there needs to be something done with both of those to where it's not affecting fighters' careers in the way that it has, like it just did with Sam Alvey. Because a lot of people, you look at that, and Alvey clearly wasn't finished in that fight, was coherent, was up, and was defending, and even gave 2 thumbs up to Goddard. And Goddard's a great referee, but people make mistakes, and when they do, I think maybe that should be something that should be amended into the new rules, something that we could look at for 2019, because it's affecting fighters' careers, man, and it sucks. So a lot of people spend a lot of money and work hard for these fights, and some of them can't afford to take a hit like that, like others can, because they're not as big of names, obviously. Other than that, we're going to talk about some UFC news. Last week we spoke about the possibility, and it kind of looked like it was confirmed from a few people that Tony and Max were going to be fighting for the interim title, but looks like Tony turned down the interim fight and is only interested in a real championship fight with Khabib or whoever's in that once that's all sorted out. So it looks like Dustin Poirier is going to be fighting Max for the interim belt at 236 in April. And rest in peace, Dustin, man. As you guys have seen before, I'm not a big fan of Dustin Poirier. He's an okay fighter, but I don't think that he really deserved to be in the top 3 position anyway. He's somebody I see below number 5 easily. The lightweight division's all mixed up, man, and I'm looking to have them have to sort some things out this year and fix that up, because there's a lot of killers in that division, man, and I don't think Dustin Poirier is one of them. And you're going to find that out at UFC 236, because Max is going to make early work out of him. I see Max finish him in the first couple of rounds. So rest in peace, Poirier, and hopefully he retires from the UFC after that, or they release him. At this point, I take fighters like Al Iaquinta more serious than I take Poirier, man. And that goes for McGregor as well. So Tony and Max for the interim lightweight title on April 13th for UFC 236. That's going to be a great card to look for. We'll see what else they add to that. And next up, Conor McGregor released some footage of him grappling with Dillon Danis. So I don't know what you guys think about that, but if you ask me, it's a joke. What do you think's going to happen in that scenario? It's you got exactly what happened with Ronda Rousey here. You got somebody that's just making their main paycheck off of training with somebody that's got a big name for no reason and building up their false confidence with Conor, just like they did with Ronda before she, broke down and ended up retiring after they embarrassed her. So, yeah, I look to see that happen with Conor McGregor this year, and I would love to see it, and I think it's going to be by the hands of Nate Diaz. What can I say about these two? They're both douchebags, man. Dillon Danis probably couldn't stand and strike with anybody in the UFC if he had to, including people like CM Punk. I've been like, if you wanna quit talking shit and join the UFC, I think you should put him in and let him see if he can even beat somebody like CM Punk. And if he does, then we can take him seriously and see if he's got enough balance between his supposedly great jiu-jitsu and what is seemingly a non-existent striking game. So yeah, what do you expect to see in this footage, man? It's a guy who's a total douchebag, and he's pretty good at jiu-jitsu, but he's making a paycheck to train with Conor McGregor. You think he's going to hurt Conor McGregor? You think if somebody who's a jiu-jitsu practitioner is going to drop arm bars and heel hooks on somebody as famous as Conor McGregor and risk losing his paycheck or having Conor get mad at him, like when Cody got pissed off at Van Damme for accidentally barely hitting him in the face? So yeah, man, that's a joke if you ask me. It's like 3 or 4 minutes of just Dillon Danis playing around with Conor McGregor so that he can get his paycheck. So I don't expect to see any wrestling or grappling or jiu-jitsu improvement from Conor McGregor at all. What I expect to see is him probably come back, because like I said, I don't take him or people like Dustin Poirier that serious, man. They don't have what it takes to cut it in the lightweight division or the featherweight division, because both divisions are full of killers, and we've seen them both get embarrassed by people who don't even who are not really that known for their striking or anything like that. So yeah, as far as that's what I think about that, man. I think both of those guys, if you ask me, they can fuck off after their next loss and go join the WWE or something. Other than that, looked like Mackenzie Dern had announced her pregnancy the other day via social media, so congratulations, Mackenzie. And we'll be looking to see what happens with that, whether or not she comes back at 115, or if because of the weight issues that she's had in the past, if she's going to move up to 125. Either way, I'm a big fan of Mackenzie Dern's, so looking forward to seeing her fight again. And she did say at the end of her statement, on her pregnancy release, that she vowed to fight again. So I think we'll definitely see Mackenzie Dern fight next year. So the main thing we want to talk about today is UFC 235. Now, if it wasn't already a big enough fight, just having Jon Jones versus Anthony Smith for a light heavyweight title here, there's a ton more fights on this. This is a stacked card. T-Mobile Arena in Vegas, expect it to be sold out if it's not already. You got Jon Jones taking on Anthony Smith for the light heavyweight title. You got Woodley defending his welterweight title against Kamaru Usman. You got Ben Askren's long-awaited debut. A lot of people are waiting to see, including myself. And you got Garbrandt's return. You got Zabit, probably his biggest test against Jeremy Stevens. And then you got Johnny Walker fighting again, and Diego Sanchez taking on the young and hungry Mickey Gall. So with Jon Jones versus Anthony Smith, this is probably going to be Jones's biggest test yet. He's fought the best of the best. He's fought DC twice. He's fought Gustafsson twice, but he's beat them all. And it's going to be while I still think he's going to win this fight, I think this is going to be his biggest test to date, and it's going to be interesting to see how he does it. We're going to see Jon Jones really pull some tricks out of the hat with this one again. I think we're going to see old school Jon Jones with this, because he's going to be under pressure. Smith's got that aggressive style, and he likes to come forward, and he likes to just try to knock people out with flurries of combos. So, yeah, it could go either way, man. Anthony Smith has everything it takes to get in the cage and knock Jones the fuck out. But Jon Jones is probably 10 times the martial artist that Anthony Smith is. So it's going to be a hell of a fight, man. I think they're really equally matched. And Anthony Smith is probably one of the biggest fighters that he's fought. So really looking forward to seeing that one. Then in the co-main event, you got T. Wood taking on Kamaru Usman. Now, Woodley doesn't seem very worried about this fight, and for good reason. While Usman is a dangerous fighter, and I think he poses a threat to the majority of the people in the welterweight division, I don't see him being able to beat Woodley, especially if a guy like Darren Till couldn't. And I'm a huge fan of Darren Till, and he's an amazing kickboxer. So, if somebody like Darren Till couldn't beat Woodley, I don't know if we're going to see anybody beat Woodley before he retires. Then next up, we got Woodley's boy Askren stepping in for his UFC debut. A lot of people can't wait to see this fight, myself included. Guy just talks a lot of shit, man, and we know he's a phenomenal wrestler, and he has the ground game to back it up. But I'm very interested with this first test to see if Robbie Lawler is going to be able to put him to sleep. I think that's what Dana has in mind with this, and that's probably why he put him up against somebody like Lawler right away. Other than that, why would you put somebody like Askren against a top 5, or he's number 6, but you're putting him up against a top 10 guy right out of the gate? So I think they're looking to kind of shut Askren up a little bit here and humble him on his debut. I think they're going to try to welcome him with somebody like Lawler, who's a very dangerous guy. We've seen him beat some of the best. But be interesting to see. I think if he does come away with the win, that it'll be via decision after a boring fight if Askren does win this fight. And it'll just be obviously because of his wrestling. But after that, we got Garbrandt's long-awaited return. I'm a fan of Garbrandt. Garbrandt's fight, I think, was the same as TJ's last fight. They both got called earlier than they thought they should have been, and one more than the other. But you look at both, and both are arguably way too early as stoppages. So, yeah, I'm really excited to see Garbrandt back. It seems like he's focused and more humble and ready to get this done, man. So if he's got his eyes set back on the prize, I would expect to see, like I said, after Cejudo and Dillashaw run it back, if Dillashaw, especially if Dillashaw loses that fight, I think that we're going to see Garbrandt and Dillashaw 3 coming up. So now after that, we got Zabit taking on Jeremy Stephens, and that's going to be an crazy fight, man. Probably Zabit's biggest test to date. With a guy like Stephens being as aggressive as he is and being as tough as he is, because Stephens has been in some all-out wars and come away with some wins after people have kind of counted him out in fights. So with somebody like Zabit, who Stephens claims is overrated and part of the hype train right now, I'm going to find out, man. We'll see what happens with Zabit. I think Zabit's still going to come away with the win on that, but it'll be interesting to see how. And after that, we got another Johnny Walker fight, and I kind of predicted that a couple of weeks ago. After Johnny Walker's fight, I thought that we were going to see him added to some cards and probably fighting 4 or 5 times in 2019, and we were right, because they added him to 235, making this an even more exciting card for everybody to fight, for everybody to watch. So yeah, man, look to see Johnny Walker come away with another win here over Misha Cirkunov. Now he's stepping in for an injured Ovince St. Preux. So, yeah. And then next up we got Diego Sanchez taking on Mickey Gall, which is going to be a really intense fight. Diego comes with a lot of intensity when he's fighting. And Mickey Gall has been known to be a really aggressive, young, hungry fighter. So we've seen what he's done so far. He embarrassed CM Punk, and then he's had some great wins after that. We look to see him continue his streak, but you never know what happens. I counted Sanchez out of his last fight, and he proved me wrong. So you're not going to want to blink for 235, man. You got a stat card for that one, and those are just the main fights. We've also got Polyana Viana and Gina Mazzani fighting on that card. So a lot of badass fights for 235 coming up. So we only had one fan question this week, and that is from Manny in Denver. And he wanted to know if we're going to have any fighters on the show this year. Yeah, Manny, absolutely. We're in the early stages of the show still. This is episode 3. And, Yeah, not only not really have the budget to fly in and out of the fight cards like we'd like to and be able to get the interviews that we'd like, but I've got a lot going on with my music career and some other things that don't really allow me to have the schedule for this that I would like to, but I'm still trying to do as much as I can. But absolutely, man, we're gonna have a lot of really big names on the show this year. Primarily starting out with some of the people who train closest to us here at home in Colorado. And we're not going to give away the names of any of those fighters, but I think you can guess who some of them are going to be, and you're not going to be disappointed, Manny. So excellent question, and the answer is yes. Now, remember, if you guys have fan questions, submit them to rearnakedpodcast@gmail.com, or you can send them via Facebook Messenger on Facebook at The Rear Naked Podcast. So, with that being said, we're going to jump over to the fight picks and show you guys what we have in mind for 235 this week. Okay, so for the first fight on the card, we've got in the women's strawweight division, Polyana Viana taking on Hannah Cyphers, and they're both coming off of losses, but we think Polyana Viana is probably going to win that fight. Then next up in the women's bantamweight, we got Gina Mazzani taking on Macy Chiasson. And that could go either way, but we're probably going to pick Gina for that one. Then in the middleweight division for the men, we've got Edmund Shabazian taking on Charles Byrd. We got Shabazian there. And then in the prelim card, Diego Sanchez taking on Mickey Gall in the welterweight division. We got Mickey Gall picked for that fight. Then Cody Stamann taking on Alejandro Perez in the bantamweight division. We're going to pick Alejandro Perez for that fight. And then we got Misha Serkinov taking on Johnny Walker in the men's light heavyweight division. Obviously, we're going to pick Johnny Walker for that one. Then after that, we got Jeremy Stevens taking on Zabit Magomedsharipov. Ranked number 13 in the men's featherweight division. Stevens at number 6. Definitely a big opportunity for Zabit to show that it's not all hype if he can beat a dude as tough and as aggressive as Jeremy Stevens. So could go either way on that one, but we're going to go ahead and pick Zabit for that. And then in the main card, first fight on the main card, we got Cody Garbrandt making his long-awaited return in the bantamweight division against Pedro Munhoz. We're going to pick Garbrandt for that one. Then we got Tisha Torres taking on Weili Zhang in the women's strawweight division. We're going to go with Zhang on that one. We think that she's going to just outstrike Torres and probably come away with the win. Robbie Lawler welcoming Ben Askren to the UFC in the men's welterweight division. We picked Robbie Lawler for that one, but like I said, it could go either way, and Askren could end up coming away with a win via decision, but I don't see Askren knocking out somebody like Lawler. Lawler's been in the game a long time, and I think there's a reason that Dana put Lawler in the first fight with Askren, because he doesn't like Askren, and he wants to see him humbled in the first fight. So obviously, we'd look to see Lawler come away with the win versus Askren in the welterweight fight. And then on the co-main event, we've got Tyron Woodley defending his welterweight title again against Kamaru Usman. And Tyron didn't seem very worried about Usman, like we said, and for good reason. We think Woodley's going to come away with the win here. I would expect if he doesn't end this in the first round, I don't see this going past 3 rounds for Woodley and Usman, man. I think he's going to make easier work of Usman than he did with Darren Till. So moving on to the main event, the big fight, John Jones versus Anthony Smith. This is one of those fights that could go either way and could end any second. But we're going to go ahead and go with Jones for this one because I'm a big fan of Jones, and I'd love to see him back to old school Jones, man. And I think if anybody's going to bring it out of him, it's going to be a guy like Anthony Smith with his aggressive style and his powerful striking. All right, guys, so that's it for the show this week. I want to thank you guys for continuing to support the show and for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button down below. And you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Rear Naked Podcast. We'll see you guys next week.